need a little theme song that I can do. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Inner Tapestry Series. Today, we are going to be getting into the energetics of impact, a topic I am very passionate about as a natural number 9 and as a person with a harmony life theme. I think that all goes together. So, we're going to dive in. Red, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself to our audience.
Be happy to. I always feel a little weird doing this. My name is Red MoonEagle. I am a psychic catalyst. I'm the healer's healer, healer's teacher. I love this topic. I have a carer life theme, which means I literally care about everything. I care about everything so deeply, I don't know how to express how much I care. And the impacts that we have unconsciously on the world, much less becoming conscious of it, have deep meaning for me. And there's so much to delve into. So I'm going to hand it back to Safrianna and say, hey, take us where you want us to go.
Yeah, and just in case it's your first time meeting me, I'm Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide. And as I mentioned, I have a harmony life theme. And as a natural number 9, I see the impact that we have on one another. And in the last episode, Red and I were talking about animal magic and like our animal companions and how we can connect with them and listen to them and all kinds of great topics. And right as we were getting ready to wrap up, I made some comment that sparked another topic that we needed to get into today. So we'll start there. We're going to start with our sort of energetic and emotional impact that we can have on our animal companions. And then we're going to branch it out from there and get a larger and larger view. I think that's the plan. So,
Yeah.
Red, to just jog your memory, where we left off, I think I had said something about how, our animal companions may be impacted by our energy. But I said something that like your mind just was like, oh my God, we need to talk about this. So does that bring back up for you sort of where we were?
It does. So, and one of my guides is like, this is what you need to start with. I'm like, okay, got it. When we talk about our impact with our animal companions, a lot of people talk about what they do for us, right? Like they help us with our emotions, they help us regulate our central nervous system, they're safe for all the plethora of emotions that we have. Be angry at you for crying. Dog isn't going to resent you for being sad. Like there's no judgment. They don't have judgment. Even some of the star-seeded entities that are like lost souls in animals or those kind of modalities, they still don't have judgment. They don't have the same kind of judgment that we live with. And when we were talking about our impact on them, most people look at animal companions in this very egocentric one-way street. Like, I need a pet. I want a pet. I have to have a pet. I can't survive without a pet. You notice the word I'm using here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pet, pet,
Yep.
pet, pet, pet. And when you start looking at these beautiful entities for who they are and recognizing their sentience, their cognizance, their individuality, their presence in our plane as companions, they are companions, right? You start recognizing the reciprocity in the relationship. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I mean, there's many ways of looking at this, but when an animal companion chooses you, or you choose them, or you choose each other, depending on how it works, right? Those animal companions do a lot of work in a way that we in our human ego-driven world have a really hard time sometimes wrapping our heads around what's happening. And I'm going to use a very specific example. So I had an animal companion in our lives, my partner and I, And we welcomed this beautiful animal companion into our life during a time where we were right before the edge of a huge, tumultuous change. We didn't know it was coming, but our animal companion did. And that animal companion bonded to both of us. And if you don't know anything about cats and their nature, many cats bond to one person at a time. Not so usual, like two at the same time with the same amount of ferocity and attachment.
Right.
And Gethin attached to both of us at the same time. And the reason I knew it had happened is that when that tumultuous thing happened in our relationship, Gethin was so worried about, like, wanted both of us to be in the room at the same time to connect to both of us at the same time. And when we split, because we split our relationship, like we moved into two different houses at one point, and Gethin was a mess. That little entity was very upset and very vocal and demonstrative, and had very clear, like, an idiot who didn't know about cats would realize that this cat was trying to get a point across, right?
Right.
Like, he did things cats don't do to say, hey, y'all are being idiots, come back together, right? And when we did come back together, there's a lot of repair, right? There's a lot of repair when you bring a relationship that goes through tumultuous things, split, and then you come back together. And there was a lot of healing that needed to happen with both of us. And I was very aware that Gethin's physiological body was quite robust. Like, he was a big cat. Like, he got up to 17 pounds. Like, he was a big cat. And he
That's
wasn't
Bane.
like, it wasn't like a Maine
Solid.
Coon or anything. He's just a generic black cat. Oh, pause. Like, it's huge. Anyway, but when we got back together, when we were working through a lot of weight, right? Got back to equilibrium. And I was watching, and when he got towards the end of his life, he only lived 9 years, and that's a really short time for a cat. At the last year of his life, it was as though, I don't know how to explain this any other way, it was as though he had reached the capacity of the life force through all of the tumultuous things he had absorbed from our hurt, pain, and anguish struggles. And he ate up using it. He used the vital force of his body, absorbing all of our shit, right? Like, if my partner and I were on the couch and trying to have a conversation, or we were sitting at the dinner table, like, he sat on a chair, like a stool, at the dinner table with us every single meal, and engaged.
I love that.
And he was at level with us to communicate and be engaged with us. He also absorbed when we had an argument or we were discussing really hard things. He would absorb all of that energy. And he wasn't an empathic cat, so it wasn't the emotions he was absorbing. He was absorbing the hurt and the pain and the ick.
The crackly
right?
energy of it all.
Yeah, the ick. You know, it's like a really sticky, molassesy, tar-like substance, right?
Yeah.
And the last year of his life, he was throwing up a lot. And it was very interesting. Like, he would throw up food, but he would also throw up this sticky, black-like substance. And we took it into the vet. The vet's like, we don't know what this is. They did tests. They were like, we don't know what this is. This is strange. Like, they kept asking me if he was licking lead paint or something. I'm like, we're in a brand new house. There's nothing for him to lick. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like, we're like super, super careful pet parents. So there's a thing that happens in the reciprocity of our impact on our animal companions, that if we are doing bad things to our bodies, or if we are ignoring our body's signals, or if we have a lot of trauma that's living in our bodies energetically, they want to make that go away. They want to take that on
Right.
for you. That's the reciprocity of what you're giving back
Right.
in the relationship. And dogs do it, cats do it, parrots do it, pick an animal companion, they all do it in that relationship, especially if there's a contract.
Yeah. Oh my
Not
gosh.
all are contracts, but if there's a
Right.
contract, no matter whether you accept the contract or not, they're going to do their job
Right.
and be aware of it and constantly try to tell you about it. They
Yeah.
want you to know.
Oh, our sweet animal companions. You made something land there about how often animal companions will bond to one person versus more than one person. And I realized that Miss Baby is definitely bonded to Justin and I, my one partner, versus my other partner and I have three uh
Mm-hmm.
three feline companions that we've adopted together, and they're very much, they go in between people and they sort of change who they're attached to at any time because they're clearly
Yeah.
they're there to vibe and do their thing and hold down the fort in different ways. So that was just very interesting and illuminating. But oh, this kitty and this story, like it really, like I see that stuff, that energy of that ick
Mm-hmm.
that we will put off into each other. And this was a great example to start with of how our energy and our emotions and the stuff we're radiating off of us, basically, right, into our field, into our aura, into
Mm-hmm.
this energy, can really have this awful impact on beings around us. And what comes to mind is how often, like, people will say, I'm not responsible for how you feel. And I agree with that to a line. But then the line is, if you're putting off ick everywhere, right, and you're around other beings, if they're even receptive at all to you, which they probably are, either through empathy, earth sense, or energy sensitivity, right? They're going to pick up those little bits of ick that are floating through the air, which means that we're responsible to our impact as much as we can be.
Yeah. Yes. And there is a lot. Like
Yeah.
I I often will break it down a lot more than that because of that empathy, energy, sensitivity baseline that most people have in their life. Like,
Right.
are they a combo? Do they have one or the other? Is it boosted by earth sense? So, for example, I say all the time, like I'm very energy sensitive. I when I meet people, I introduce myself. I say anything that hurts your feelings. If you're upset at me, if I've said something that brings you joy or sadness or anything in between, you got to kind of tell me because I don't know. I'm not going to pick up on the emotional stuff of it. I will learn who you are, and I will learn to acknowledge and pay attention to different signals that tell me what your emotions are. But I don't really pick up like if you're happy or sad. Like you
Right.
could be raging angry at me and smile at me, and I'm not really gonna know until I get to know you what that spike looks like, right?
Right.
So an energy sensitive that engaged with somebody and makes a hurtful statement. Um, I don't like the shirt you're wearing, or that's not a very good color for you. Like I've seen this happen over and over again. And energy sensitive just makes a statement. They think they're communicating, right?
Well, that just
And
made
the
another
person,
situation in life make sense.
right? So the person that receives it has a huge flare of emotion and tries to tell the energy sensitive, hey, I that doesn't make me feel safe, or I don't did you mean something else? I didn't land very well, or that makes me upset, right? The energy sensitive might have been taught that adage of, well, I'm not responsible for your feelings, you have to deal with that shit. What the energy sensitive versus the person that's receiving it, whether they be empathetic or energy sensitive or whatever, is that that statement creates a shove push energetically against the person that's trying to communicate back with them. And that
Mhm.
person, no matter what their gift package is, they're going to feel the push.
Right.
And same thing with the empath. I've had empaths tell me, and I go back to this a lot because I did struggle with it for a long time, which is, well, you're empathic, Red, you're just not accepting it. And I'm like, I'm really not. And
Right.
what the empath is doing with their tentacles in that moment is, I'm going to smear you with my tentacles and feel up to push you to reciprocate empathically to me, not giving me what I want.
Right.
And yes, when you have an encounter with someone and you say, hey, I feel this, or I'm expressing this, or I have statements, you have to be in a place of acceptance of what it is that's happening from you toward them and where that impact lands so that you don't follow it up with force. Because it's that force that creates the big ripples of impact and hurts people. And nobody really
Yeah.
wants to hurt anybody. Nobody really does. Really.
Yeah.
I don't.
Any perception of wanting to hurt others is the projection of the hurt that we're experiencing within ourselves. And we've
Right.
we've talked about before that just off your energetic blueprint for right now, and you can come back. And it takes that sensitivity. And this is such an interesting topic because it's something we talk about a lot over here, given uh we all have different blueprints in our little polycule, and we have one that we're pretty sure has not been confirmed, but is like, we're pretty sure exclusively energy sensitive. We've got me that's the combo. We've got another that's like pure empath, and how those different energies feel in play. And we were talking the other day about how I sort of hold people accountable for their impact, and that push and pull sometimes, and the tendrils, and just all of how we don't even realize we're impacting each other because it's
Nope.
happening on a subtle level. But
Mm-hmm.
then, unfortunately, society and upbringing and whatnot, not always fun, lots of trauma. And then shame comes up when we start to
Yep.
acknowledge the impact that we are having.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of people get to this point where they're like, I'm oh God, I'm having this impact and that's not what I meant to have. So I'm just going to like ball myself up into, a little singularity, and I'm not going to interact with the world, or, some
Yeah.
other defense, or I'm going to come out and project because I'm afraid and I want to put blame on somebody else. But
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't have to be that way. Like,
Nope.
acknowledging our impact. I'll
Mm-hmm.
share a story. When I turned 30, I, for my birthday that year, I got a tarot reading from a trans Black activist. It was like my first tarot
Mm.
reading I'd ever purchased. And of course, I was like, I want to really make an intentional decision with who. And this intuitive was just incredible, and like a queer icon. I mean, just incredible energy. And got the reading, and they sent me. They didn't know me. We'd never talked before, but they send me all this stuff, and they're like, and you need to make amends for the impact you had in the past. And I'm like in my victim mindset at this point still. Like,
Oh,
just
yeah.
literally at this point, 3 months out of the most toxic relationship of my life. So I'm still very much healing. And this person is like, you need to own your impact. And my victim mentality, I was like, I don't want to ever admit I did anything wrong in the past. Well,
Oh.
then I sat with it, and I really sat with it. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, what impact have I had, and what would it mean if I acknowledged that? And I realized that, in the past of that not so healthy relationship, of course, I'm polyamorous. We were polyamorous at that time, and we had brought another person into our lives and had a relationship. And then the trauma and the drama got too much, and I broke up with her. And I said, like, you got to go. Really, I should have said to the other person, you got to go. But instead, I sided with the toxic, and I put those walls up, and I continued to stay in a situation that wasn't good for me. And the impact that that had on this other person was like, whoa, why am I being broken up with out of nowhere? Like, where's this coming from? And it was just my trauma response. So I really like that was when I was like, oh my God, like that really was on me. I decided to stay in the unhealthy relationship. I decided to defend that relationship. I was the one that broke it off with her. And now she's experiencing this ripple effect of heartbreak and confusion. And where the heck did this come from? And what's wrong with me? That was on me. So I ended up reaching out and like apologizing and being like, I chose to stay in this unhealthy relationship. And yes, there's more to it than just that, of course, because
Right.
it takes
Of
about
course.
7 times for anyone to leave a domestic violence situation. So no victim
Yep.
shaming or blaming, but it actually acknowledging my impact at the end there brought my power back. I was
Hmm.
like, oh, now in the future, I won't do this and have this negative impact again. I'll be able to show up honestly and authentically and like share what's really going on instead of trying to hide the BS behind the scenes. And my relationships have been so much healthier since then and
Oh,
so much
yeah.
more open. And when someone comes to me and they're like, yeah, you hurt my feelings when you did XYZ, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me. And like, let's talk about that so I don't continue to have this impact. So the ownership piece really empowers us to go to the next level. So can we release the shame? Like, yes, we can be like, oh, that doesn't feel good, but we don't have to swallow ourselves alive in it. We don't have to beat ourselves up.
There's an interesting. I love that story. I absolutely love that. There was in my younger years, because of some toxic stuff between me and my mom being very mentally ill and things like that. One of the things that I struggled with for years is the knowledge that I was trying to carry all of the burdens of ownership. So if she did something wrong, it was my fault,
Right.
right? Like if my dad did something wrong, it was my fault. If my sister did something wrong, it was my fault. If I did something wrong, it was like I murdered somebody, right? Like there was this huge, it's a burden. I wouldn't say shame, but for me, it was just this burden of just trying to carry the impact of everyone else's decisions. And at some point when I was about 13, 14, I kind of decided, I ain't carrying anybody's shit but my own. Like I just flushed. There was like I always have this image in my head of I took all of everybody else's shit and I put it in the toilet and I flushed it. And flushing, I decided in that moment. I was outside. I was walking by the stream down at the bottom of my parents' property, and I had just seen a very rare southern red deer like walk across the other. To remember it, and it was this sign. It was this sign that I can only own me. I can only own me, my decisions, my emotions, and I can own my impact. Right? Like I don't even think phrasing at the time. I definitely acknowledged in that moment that it was, I'm not going to carry anybody else's stuff. And if I'm going to own my stuff, I have to find a way to communicate that to people.
Right.
And that's when I really started turning a corner in my life. And I can tell you, I definitely did not do it well for another 20 something years. And I still struggle with it sometimes. But I kept trying, right? Like I
Yeah.
kept really trying to own my energy, own my emotions, and be aware that I think I'm trying, but it's not landing. And that also led to a deep dive in talking about I'm not empathic and I can't figure out how to communicate that with all the empaths around me. It took me another 25 years to really land on, okay, you empaths, we're just going to have this conversation right now. I don't get it. So anytime I meet an empath, like I spend extra time like communicating that with them because usually they're like, We don't understand that you don't have that.
I mean, I could understand why empaths don't understand the energy sensitivity perspective because they're like sometimes very complex in myself and how to sort it out. So I want to like we've talked about animals, we've talked about a little bit about this energy sensitivity and empathy piece and even each other, like having an impact
Mm-hmm.
on each other. But I want to go even deeper
Mm-hmm.
into the bigger collective work that this really has to do with because we are an individual, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that every single person, the most important thing they can do is heal themselves, like get in alignment in themselves, repair any distortion,
Mm-hmm.
dissonance, etc. And here, not in a like, not in an out of balance, striving for it, gotta seek perfection kind of way, but in a really
Yep.
like you're being led by your soul. Because I see every single being, every single entity as a cell in the larger body of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
So if one cell goes cancerous,
Mm-hmm.
it can start
It's
to spread and impact. And then I think about the little psychology tip that we give that the 5 people you surround yourselves with are the energy that you're most likely to experience in your life. Okay? So take these two things and then we talk about impact. So how are we impacting one another if we are keeping ourselves small, keeping ourselves unhealthy, sabotaging, shaming and guilting ourselves all the time, right? Like really pouring in these not so healthy emotions.
well, there's you say that, and I'm actually reminded of a very specific circumstance. Um, there is an individual that I've worked with off and on, and this person wants to, because it's that smallness, right? Like they've folded in and they've created a tiny world of safety, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't understand my impact. I don't understand what's happening. So I'm going to pull it all in, right? So this person, when they get to a particular point, because I have kind of an open door policy with my clients, once you're established, like communicate, let me know, see if I can help. And this person will always reach out. But I'm the only one they reach out with. And so one of the things that has been challenging for this person is the creating those other connections. And the juxtaposition between this person that I'm discussing is so vastly different. My partner tells me all the time, he's like, whatever that analogy is about the 5 people closest to you, he goes, you know, 30, they're all close to you. He goes, your world is so big.
Right.
like I go to this activity and it's these 4 or 5 or 10 people, and I go to this activity and there's 20 people, and it's this bigness that he is definitely living in a world. My partner lives in a world where it's the 5 people, right? Like that's closest to you.
Right.
And I encourage all of my clients when they're working on self and healing process, I'm completely okay when they narrow their world to heal, right? Because I want them to surround themselves with non-cancerous inputs, right? To
Hmm.
heal. And as they heal, they can start making more connections, right? And they be healed connections rather than adding more cancer to the pot.
Right.
And you get to a, and I know I'm not the only one that's done this, and I think you have done this, Safrianna. Like there are people that you reach that capacity of awareness of your impact, you reach a capacity within your healedness, and that little cell of that cancerous cell that you've healed has been healed so much that now the entire organ is healed enough that that organ can be producing more cells to reach out that healing. And
Right.
when I first, the community that you and I have connections with, that community was a very palpable. I came home like after a third or fourth meeting or whatever, and I was telling my husband about it, and he goes, because I was happens sometimes. Like I go into these spaces and people tell me their perceptions of me, right? Which is definitely not my perception of myself. So I'm always like, where does that come from? And I don't understand. And used. And my husband goes, well, you just opened another doorway. You've just added a whole nother 30, 40 people to a plethora of connections that you've already done. He goes, do you realize that everybody does that with you? And I went, they do? And he goes, yes, they do. Because he notices it, right? Because his world is so small. And I am number one in his world. And his children are the other two. And then he's got, two other, like he knows a lot of people are not in his little inner cell.
Yeah.
And it's hard for him to expand out of that, even though I know that he's done a lot of healing. So it's a very interesting dynamic of you reach that capacity, and it's very interesting. He'll walk through the doorway with me into these new spheres, and then he'll go, yeah, that's too big, I don't know, and he pulls away. And so, sometimes he'll step back in. Like there's a couple people locally with the community you and I have correlative connection with, and I've had some of those people in my house a couple times, and he absolutely loves having them around. He'll go, so what are you doing this weekend with such and such? Oh, are you having coffee with such and such? Like he wants them to come over. He wants to add them to his bucket, right?
Yeah.
There. He's very aware of his impact. He's very aware of how he comes across to other people. He's very aware of his jokes and his humor and his deflection. And he's very aware of that. So he's careful with it. And that's right. A beautiful thing. It's not a scary thing. It's not a bad thing. But someone like you and I, Safrianna, I think that we're so cognizant of that impact in that healed cell analogy that when you start to spread that healing, it just compounds. You spread it and it spreads and it spreads and it spreads. And those that can't handle it don't understand sometimes why they can't handle it. They don't understand their own sickness.
Right.
And it takes a lot of patience. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, there's sort of the reverse of it is, if you're not owning your impact and you're not quite aware of how you are impacting things, or you are trying to force more people into your bucket than want to be there, right? You can have a really negative impact that can lead to people pushing you away or needing to draw boundaries. And so if you feel like over and over and over again, people don't want to spend time with you or they don't want to be around you for whatever reason, it is an invitation to go within. Again, does not have to be from a place of shame, but from a place of curiosity, like what in me is doing this, going back to that pushing energy, that pushing or that trying to get the tendrils in to feel the good and pull it out, or, whatever we might subconsciously or energetically be doing. Like boundaries go up in place when our impact is hurtful with most people that are not in that codependent stage. That used to be who I was. Like I was so codependent and so people pleasy that I would just let people come in and violate my boundaries and let them have that impact that wasn't good for me, because I was afraid I'd be completely alone if I didn't let them do that, right? So the impact was mostly on me, but it was also on them, and that I wasn't drawing the boundary and I wasn't letting them know this is not okay and this is not how you're going to be able to be in a healthy human relationship, right? And that's where that ownership of our boundaries is really important, and something that people don't think about their impact. One of my slogans is, if they don't respect your no, they don't deserve your yes.
Oh, I like that.
And yet there are a lot of us that are like, no, and then the person does something anyway and we're like, okay, I guess I'll let you do that. Like we need to stand in our power with that, because until people get the message over and over and over again that that's not healthy, that's not okay, that's not safe, That's not acceptable. Unfortunately, they're probably just going to keep doing what they're doing, right? Until there is a
Mhm.
consequence. And we live in a world that often doesn't have consequences for some of the people that are doing the most egregious of impacts. So eh,
You know,
there's a lot there too.
you know, so there's a couple layers in this that I'm going to come at from an angle I often come at it, that wheel image. And the impacts that we have are connected to community, right? No matter what your community is, your 5 people, your big impact, whatever it is, right? And looking at it from the angle of the the kind of the top, right? Like, I'm going to work on me. I am going to do a retreat. I'm going to do this psychedelic journey, and I'm going to focus on me, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to only ever talk about that. And I'm going to force that down everybody around me's throat, and then denigrate anybody else's choice to not go through that journey, right? This is an example I've seen. And the community trying to pull together for that person saying, hey, we're really glad you had that experience. And that's not our thing, but we love you and we want you to be, but we would also like you to just be with us and just demonstrate, show, connect, like be whole in your experience instead of it being something you have to force on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also that person then, instead of saying, oh, this is an opportunity for me to connect with people in a new way, amazing psychedelic journey and awakening and all that other stuff. Instead, they go to a place of, well, the people I was around just weren't ready for me. They just weren't good for me. So I'm going to cut all of them out because they're not in a higher vibration because they didn't go through that journey. I have seen that happen over and over and over again. And it's so sad.
It's
It's so
very
sad.
sad. And this is my whole mission. I was just writing yesterday, like this massive blog post trying to articulate my vision, still
Mhm.
trying to articulate my vision, but that all beings get to express authentically and in alignment and, have their supportive people that they're surrounded by and worship God or the universe in whatever form they see fit and dress however they want
Yep.
to dress. Of course, within reason. There's nudist colonies for that, right? Like, but
Right.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, we can have boundaried, consensual places to do pretty much
Mhm.
most things
Yeah,
that
pretty
healthy
much.
adults would want to do with other healthy adults. And so we don't have to have this impact of trying to force people to do things one way or do the one size fits all approach or shame them into believing, the way we believe, like fear. Oh my
Right.
gosh, like we could talk for hours on the impact of fear, right? The biggest and earliest example I can remember of the impact of fear is being told by my great grandmother that I was going to hell when I was 4 years old, having no idea what that meant other than it was bad and I was bad, and crying as a little 4 year old in my bed, like, this unseen figure is going to smite me with a lightning bolt any moment and I need to pray for forgiveness. Like, like just fear. Right. And so people will do all kinds of things from fear and from shame and to try and avoid disappointment, to try and avoid unpleasant feelings. And when we actually just see those parts of us as a part of us that needs attention and needs to be seen, we can stop those parts from having the behavioral impact out in the world because we're connecting with them and meeting their needs before the nervous system responses are able to take over, right? And it takes time to
Right.
get to that point. I always highlight that when I was still very much hijacked in my trauma, you could like startle me and I would be hijacked and like this with my ears, like, my shoulders to my ears and just tense in my body for hours sometimes. And now I can release that within 30 seconds. And it's like, that is just so important to acknowledge. It takes a long time to reduce our impact. So
Yeah, it
that's
does.
okay. Or to
Mhm.
increase our positive impact. So it's not an overnight change. Like, allow yourself to take this time.
Yeah, it takes time. When I from the previous example, like when my partner and I were going through the eve of right before things just would became tumultuous center. I don't know how to say that in a different way, but like startle reflexes were weird, like things that had never bothered me before, and it was really bad for a couple years. And I knew it wasn't normal for me, right? Like I knew of normal me. And I do have neurodiversity, I do have autism, I do have ADHD. So it's interesting that when the heightened reactiveness, theological body react these layers of stuff, when I gradually worked through all the healing in that, and it took a couple years. Like it's not like it happened overnight. It certainly didn't. I
Right.
mean, I had some, and then chunks slough off a little bit, and then I discovered the huge knot of the mess underneath it. And I kept working at it. I knew that
Right.
who I was underneath all of that was somebody that could handle big noises and could be tickled and could be touched and could be yelled at without going into a place of no affect, you're not anything from me down. Um,
Right.
I still do have autism and ADHD. I do still have visceral responses to things that now that I understand about the disability underneath it all, I'm like, oh, okay. So those are just things that I'm just going to do, but I don't have to add and carry everybody else's impact on me. I can still have my boundary and call it out and call out like, hey, that impacted me this way. And I have learned, especially through some of the body activation language that we use all the time now, which is there are people that it's actually a permission thing. If you ask them, like some
Hmm.
body activations need permission for you to share.
Right.
And
Yep.
it's a different kind of thing than permission in general. It's the hey, that had an impact. Are you in a place that you can receive? And other body activation, they pick up on it and they're like, what just happened? And I'm like, oh, they're ready to, like, they're asking, right? And that creates such a beautiful two-way flow of acceptance and understanding so that both people in that circumstance have the ability to grow and heal and honor the impact that we have amongst each other in a good way. Good
Yeah.
way.
Yes. Yes. And so I want to kind of bring this all home to the impact we can have on the planet as
Yes.
we anchor into, I am very against the idea of striving to be high vibe all the time. And here's why, because that's not how it
Yep.
works. If we're trying to hold a high vibrational state all the time, we're gonna plummet even lower into the low vibe. First of all, we
Mhm.
want to do this dance. We want to go into the low vibe, aka the shadow, and excavate the information, the gems of
Mhm.
wisdom, lessons needing to be learned, and we bring them back into the light. And we are able to get into that higher vibe state because we are in relationship with these inner parts. And that has an impact again on everything around us because things can come into into alignment in a new way. So how else can we really start to anchor in having a more positive impact on the planet? And, completely out of an energetic perspective, I will just throw out there, I am very in support of people reducing single use plastics because that is one thing. Like, this is my soapbox. If there's one thing I could convince everybody to do, it would be to just reduce your single-use plastics as much as you can. Even if you're not perfect, just as much as you can, because that has a huge energetic impact on our planet with the plastics. But anyway, so what other things come up for you that we can do energetically or in how we show up in the world to really have a more positive impact?
So there's a couple things actually, and it goes back to something that I teach all the time. Goes back to the wheel. Which is, when you said single-use plastics, I went to the community, which is food. And the impact on our economy, the impact that we have on our world by our choices that we make and where we source food. And I'm extraordinarily passionate about it, that the ease and the excuses that we make to each other and ourselves, right, to buy something that is triple packaged, right? So like a cough drop. The cough drop is triple packaged. It's inside a plastic bag. Each individual cough drop is wrapped in a plastic coated thing. It's not wax, it's plastic. And sometimes they have another extra little thing on the inside that it's with, right? And the sourcing of that food-like substance, it's a cough drop. I am very aware that it's a cough drop, but it is a food-like substance. It's not real food. You're not giving yourself nutrition, okay? So when I think about reciprocity with the planet and the impact of our choices and our energetics and our tendency to make choices that have ease, and I use that word loosely, ease, because culture and marketing and economics and what they all tell us, well, everybody does it today. Mm-hmm. And or, well, there's a government agency that is around that we voted for over the years, so it must be protecting us, right? Like there's assumptions made that fob off the ownership of your own impact in the world. You're fobbing off the ownership of your choice onto something outside of you. It is just as harmful as the, I'm just going to say what I mean and you're responsible for your emotions and fuck you. It's the exact same thing. It spreads poison. So I really, not just choices of getting rid of single-use plastics. That is a piece of it. But think of, if you go to food, make choices about real food, right? So take canvas bags. You know, like the sheets, they come in those poly cotton bag things, and everybody throws the bag that the sheets come into, right? Keep those. Put your onions in it. Put your mushrooms in it. They can be thrown in the wash.
I have so many
right?
weird things I've kept for storage over the years.
Right. Yes. So any that when you go, instead of choosing a plastic bag of frozen mushrooms, go pick the fresh mushrooms. Yes, you might have to go to the store twice a week. Oh my God. Lo and behold, promise you, watched. So I sat down with a client about a year. He goes, I eat real food, Red. I don't understand why it's so expensive. I do everything I can. I'm not losing weight. I went, okay, I want you to keep your food journal. She goes, well, I already do that. I went, no. Different kind of food journal. I want you to tell me, when do you stop off at the gas station and pick up a coffee and a candy bar or a snack? I want you to tell me how many times you use the snack machine at work. I want you to tell me how many times you stop off at Taco Bell just to pick something up real quick between appointments. Because your food journal tells me I ate a taco. It does not tell me where that taco came from. I would like to know, store. Give me some insight as to the real thought process behind the choices. And she did it for a week, and she called me and she was in tears. She bawled for half. Yeah. the choices I was making and the excuses I was giving myself, thinking I was doing the right thing. Because
Yeah.
we all do it. We
We all do
all
it.
do it. I do it. I totally do it. And I know I do it. And when I
Yes.
do it, I practice exactly what I preach. If I pick up a bag of chips on my trip to an SCA event, I tell every time, like, you are doing against what you, and I'm not going to go to shame. I'm not going to go to disappointment. I'm not going to go to fear. I'm going to go, I've picked it up this time. I'm going to try not to do it next time. And I've gotten so good about most events. I don't pick up stuff. I do food prep before the day before the event. I chop up vegetables and I make homemade hummus. But it's taking me time to work through the habit, the cultural pressure, that impact of the big thing on your decisions. If we go to a place of shame, like that client that I was saying, like, we had to work through weeks of shame and regret and disappointment and fear and perfectionism and all this other stuff. Like, that has no business in this. You got to work through it, but let's not borrow more. Let's just work through what's there, right?
Right.
Food, like real food. Shop at your farmer's market. Take your own bags. Don't buy anything that's in a plastic thing if you can possibly avoid it. Like, I can't avoid it when I buy grapes. They're all in those individually
I know. I'm
shitty
actually going
bags,
plastic
right?
free in 2025. That's been a goal that it landed in early 2024. And I was like, I know I'm giving myself a year runway, but I'm like starting to notice all the places that, it's not
We
real
can't help it.
food, too overpackaged products. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it really is everywhere. But there are many places we can start to make these little changes. And I think
Yes.
this would actually, I would love to do, maybe it doesn't have to be our next live, but uh, the energetics of food just as a topic
Oh,
because we can
I could talk
absolutely
about that
like
for 2 sessions.
me too. And I love talking about it and I like to share that perspective between people who, are carnivores and are vegetarians and vegans and like share those different perspectives because there's
Oh,
so
yeah,
many different ways to look at it. But there's,
there is.
you know,
And keep going. I had a thought.
I was like,
Keep going.
you looked like it was really coming in hot there for a second. But
It
yes,
really
just
was.
going into this impact piece even more, right? Like there are so many tangible 3D things we can do literally right here in our bodies to improve the impact that we have on ourselves and therefore on the planet around us. And then, of course, there is the more subtle, subconscious, energetic stuff, the emotional stuff, the stuff we don't see. And there are so many layers of that. And both Red and I help people navigate that, right? Like that is, we're here to help,
That's what we
especially with
do.
that medicine wheel, right? To really help people come into relationship with the four elements, with earth, air, fire, water, with the bodies, the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body. Like all of them have an impact on all of the others. And then this
And the
impact goes out
community
and
body.
and then
The
yes, and then the
community body.
community. And the community that we're in really is important and it matters and it makes a difference. So is there anything else you want to say on impact today? I'm making a note that we're going to talk about food specifically. That's
Yeah.
important,
Remind me
especially with it.
later. Yeah. I think impact, like at a global impact. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I've actually had a couple people reach out to me in a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear paradigm being spread everywhere.
Yes.
And one of the things that I tell everybody right now, and I've been saying it for a while, so I'll just keep saying it. Connect in with your physical body. Breathe. Really breathe. Really let yourself breathe. Be in your body. Be okay with your body. Drink water. Like real water. Do not substitute water with pop, coffee. Yeah, water. Drink real water. We could talk about charged water a whole nother day, but drink water. Real water. And please don't go out and buy a $5,000 water machine. Just drink water, okay? So water, breathe, make sure you're sleeping. You got to be sleeping, and natural sleep if you can possibly wing it. Get cool in the evening. Try not to stay. I know people need sleep meds, and I get that. That's a whole other topic, but really try to find a way to get to sleep naturally,
Right.
because your body needs that rest to be able to cope with everything that's coming at you. And real food, right? Real food, and move. Be comfortable with your body and get moved. I am not going to tell you in a gym. I'm not going to tell you to do an exercise program. I'm not going to tell you to do any of those things. I have ADHD. I am the worst person in the world to give a regimen to, because I couldn't stick with it. If you paid me $1 million, I would totally lose that. But move. You can move. You can find creative ways of moving in a way that's safe for you. And
oh my gosh, chair yoga. Google chair yoga. That's intense.
Yeah. Five things: water, food, rest, movement, breath. All of those things are when you're hit with all that fear. Pick one of those things. Do one. Not all five. It's good if you can stack 2 or 3 of them together, but if you do all 5, great, you get a gold star. But those things will help that fear. It will help your body recognize what's actually dangerous for you and where you're being pressured through the impact of others through a fear paradigm. And it will also help you come back into your place of power so that you can hold on to that power and step out of group of 5 and into your outside, and you can be that ripple that stops that fear paradigm from going any further. We have previous calls where we talk about untangling the bullshit.
We do. We got a lot of good
stuff. This is untangling the bullshit. This is, I'm not taking this fear. I am not adopting that. I don't want that impact.
Yes.
I don't need that. Yeah.
Yes. So ownership, right? Ownership, know what's yours and what's others. Take care of yourself exquisitely, right? Like your physical body is the foundation. So it is the temple, it is the house, taking very good care of you, this vessel. And remember that your energy, your emotions do have a ripple effect out onto others, whether you mean it to or not, which is why that ownership piece is important. And if you tuned in late in this, Red shared such a powerful story at the beginning about the impact we can have on our animal companions when they consume our not so fun and healthy, not so healthy energy. So I think this is very illuminating, Red, as always. And I love how every episode we're like, oh my gosh, and we could talk about this, and we can talk about this, and we can talk about this. So if you are not familiar with this series yet, we go live approximately every 2 weeks. And this was episode 12. So feel free to head over to YouTube and watch the prior 11 episodes if you like our energy together. We love to share wisdom and just good vibes with you all. So thank you again, Red. And
thank you so much. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel complete. Do you feel complete?
I do. I think we've run this gambit.
All right. Well, beloved friends, we will see you back here in another 2 weeks. If there's a topic you want us to cover, please feel free to reach out via email or message on Facebook or wherever you can comment and let us know a topic you'd like us to cover. And we would be happy to do so if it is something in our purview. So until next time.